all of that time and me being a mom has helped me as a speaker. If I wouldn't have been engaged, then when a mom stands up when I speak and they say, how do you do it all? I would have to fake an answer, but I can then say, sometimes I used to cry in the pantry. I can relate to them because of that time I had. So everything that you're going to be experiencing in the next few years, it's all going to end up serving you in a bigger, better way when you're in a place to share more.
Welcome to Amplify with Jess Ekstrom, a show designed to help women get out of their head and into their zone of influence.
Okay, let me tell you about my good friend, Megan Reilly. She's an incredible keynote speaker, podcaster, and owner and COO of Tippi Toes, a children's dance company that her sister founded in college. In 1999, Megan came on board, and together they started slowly expanding. But by 2008, they had several locations, but they thought maybe we should start franchising.
I got a book back when that was more typical. Got a book and started opening, reading Franchise Management for Dummies. And I was like, man, I think we could do this. And we sold our first franchise in 2009. We did it our way for sure. Like we didn't do the typical brokerage, there's a very robust franchise industry, which we are now a part of, but we weren't for many years. We did it our way because we were young women wanting to have a life and be at drop off and pick up with our kids. And we wanted to just organically grow. And that's what we did. And we brought in a lot of other working moms at the time that became working moms through Tippi Toes. And they started their businesses in the various cities around the country. And it's just been positive and wonderful. And our dance classes are recreational, so they bring joy to kids. So, it's about building kids up and giving them an opportunity to be on stage also, because they get to do dance recitals, which is such a cool opportunity for them. But we want to build confidence and really bring joy to kids through dance. So we've done that for many years now. We almost have 40 franchises in the United States. We have a master franchise in China. And that is what I spend most of my time doing. And I love it. And it's a joy. So, but during that experience, we did find ourselves on Shark Tank. My brother-in-law submitted an application without telling my sister or I about it. We get a call. They're like, we'd like you to be on Shark Tank. We were like, oh my God, they found us. This is incredible. Come to find out, my brother-in-law submitted an application. So we had that experience too, which that's one of my keynotes as I talk about, the lessons from Shark Tank and how they have allowed me to really find success in different ways. I keep relying on those tools that I learned from that experience. And they've helped me in my business. They've helped me as a speaker. They've helped me develop a podcast. They've helped me as a parent. I mean, the lessons I learned from Shark Tank were really valuable. It took me some time to reflect on them and realize that there was a lot there that I could pass on to other people, because it's a rare experience for people to get to go on Shark Tank, but the lessons are really robust. And so that's what I like to share as I speak. But everything for me kind of weaves together, podcast and it all kind of ends up weaving together. I just keep leaning into things I like, and things that I'm into. So
the idea that we have to niche, whatever you call it, down and do one thing, I think is so dated. We are all multifaceted human beings, and especially in the entrepreneurship world, once an entrepreneur, always an entrepreneur. And do, like you said, do things that you like, and then you realize over time that there's actually probably a through line to them that you didn't even notice.
Totally. Totally. And I think a lot of times it's interesting. A lot of times people will see people's story on the back end and they're like, how did they know to strategize all those things together? And I'm like, they didn't. They started to do stuff, and then they look back and they're like, you know what? Look at that. That's there. So I just feel like I used to always think how they figure that out? I'm like, they didn't. No, they just tried the next thing, and pieced it together.
Yeah. I mean, I used to think that everyone was every successful person was walking around with this secret that they weren't telling me, you ever get that feeling? You're just all of you know a password that is on a card in your wallet that you're not sharing with anyone. And you said, it's no, you're just doing the next thing. And a lot of times we don't see the things that don't work out. But talk about the speech of a lifetime, doing your pitch on Shark Tank. Was that your introduction to speaking? Were you speaking before that? I feel like that's going down the Black Diamond before the Bunny Hill.
Yeah, I never thought about that, to be honest, Jess, but 100%, that was exactly what it was. And I wasn't speaking at that point. I really started speaking later on in life, partly because I am a mom. I've got kids that they're 6, 8, and 10. And I was, building my business, and I didn't have any more time to start speaking before I did start speaking. Like I did it. Tippi Toes is getting all my time, and I had babies, that was it. There was nothing else I could give, but I knew I always wanted to. So I was always like reading things, listening to podcasts, a lot of Gary Vee, a lot of just personal brand and those kinds of things. So it was always on my mind. And I now look back and I know I was being primed for the next season where I would be speaking. But when I went on Shark Tank, no, I didn't have any experience. It was just, here's how you pitch. And we were working with producers, and we didn't work with anybody else other than the producers. But yeah, that was quite a first speech to give, but it worked.
What were some of like the tips or the rules or anything that they gave you on Shark Tank that you had to follow that maybe you still use today?
Interestingly, they give you a general idea, I think, of kind of the story. They're putting together a show, they're putting together entertainment. And so, it was more honestly with them talking about what we wanted from the sharks, and then just making sure we were positioning that the right way, and then making sure like the percentages and the money made sense for what we wanted to pitch to them. But in terms of really like how to pitch, what to do, like there wasn't any direction on that. They were there with us. And so I'm sure now it's been years. I'm sure there was some coaching along the way, but I don't remember there ever being anything really like, this is important to do, or this is how it will land. And frankly, they probably like to just let people,
go rogue.
If you flounder, and it makes good TV or whatever.
Still makes good TV.
Yeah. It's a win for them either way. So yeah, there wasn't that much.
Yeah.
We just prepared. That was our big thing. We were season 2, and I remember watching season 1, and I was like, you better know your stuff if you're going to go on Shark Tank, or they will eat you alive on national television. And so that was my big thing. And one of the things I speak about is the importance of focus. Leading into a big goal, there's nothing that is more important than focus. And so that was a lesson I learned. Like we were so focused on that pitch, so that in that moment, nothing was going to throw me off. And I use that in my speaking to this day. I say, I have a typical speech that I like to give, and I still work on it regularly and leading up to any presentation, because I'm like, I want to know it so that if, there's someone that breaks a glass in the back of the room, that I can make a comment on that, make it entertaining or whatever, and switch right back to my topic. But I can't do that if I'm like in my head worried about, the cadence or whatever.
Constantly. So yes, exactly. And I think, I want to talk about the way that you can use speaking to grow your business, but not in the form of a pitch. Like, I feel like there's a lot of entrepreneurs that, want speaking opportunities, and then they get speaking opportunities, and it is a profile about their business, and it's like as if they were pitching on Shark Tank or investors, but they're doing that to an audience. And then they're wondering why they're not getting paid. They're like, I want to get paid to talk about my business and tell my story. But what you have done, and the way that I was able to do it as well, to speak about Headbands of Hope, grow my business, but also become a paid speaker, was treating every speaking opportunity not as a pitch to talk about my business, but to be able to extract the universal experience from my business and lay it out in a way that the audience can learn something. So most people that you speak to might not ever be on Shark Tank, but they can learn from the lessons that you learned on Shark Tank. So while you're sharing those experiences and those lessons for the audience, they're also simultaneously learning about Tippi Toes and potentially franchise opportunities for them. So how has speaking, like, I guess first my question is, when did speaking begin after Shark Tank? And was that something you knew to do from the start, or how did that go for you?
Yeah, so I've dreamed about speaking forever, but I didn't start speaking until the best time to start speaking, in the middle of COVID. When I was kind of like, everything changed in my life, and I was finding myself at home with my kids, and like it was just, given the circumstances, I was like, I was actually starting my podcast, and I just was like, I wanted to do I just wanted to do certain things. There was only so much that I could do with Tippi Toes. We were working around the clock, but once we were up and running, but then things were still shut down, it was like there was only so much to do. And so I started reaching out at that point to try to speak. And I will say that it's interesting because I didn't think about it until you just brought this up. But in business, when I'm running Tippi Toes and I go in to sell to a school that like we're going to bring Tippi Toes to them, I don't ever go into that school thinking I'm going to pitch my business. I genuinely think I'm going in to share the stories of what we could bring to this school. I genuinely feel that in my bones because I know the value of Tippi Toes in a school. That is exactly how I think of a pitch or a speech. When I go to speak, I am not thinking about, I hope someone, wants to buy a franchise after this. I am literally thinking like, I'm going to take the experiences that I've had as a business and entrepreneur and running Tippi Toes for many years and share those. Because I guess I'm like, nobody wants to hear a pitch. Everybody wants to hear a story. I don't want to hear a pitch, even if it can have the same outcome. But when you go into it with really, really a heart of like, I just want to share this. I want to share this story. It has so much more power and impact. And so I think it was a kind of a natural thing for me because I did that with business where I saw nobody wants to be pitched to ever. Nobody. Like even the sharks, they're kind of like, they kind of make it their own thing. Like, so I don't think, I think the way to get to that point, and I understand people are still like, there's a point, like you still want to convert or you still want to have your business do well. I get that. And I'm all for it. But in my opinion, the best way to do that is to not go in with the mindset of I'm going to pitch, but go into it with the mindset of how can I share lessons from these experiences.
100%. It's like, and I think that also goes into how you present yourself as a thought leader. It's not like, hey, come on in, let me tell you about how I can, franchise, or hey, come on in, come buy mic drop workshop or buy some headbands. It's like, no, this is what I have to offer you. And this is the value that I bring as a speaker. My content, reflects that. And if this is something you need, come on in. And another thing that I, tell people in mic drop workshop is like, if you present yourself with speaking opportunities as if you're asking for a favor, then that's not the mindset that you should go about. Instead, you are doing them a favor because you have something to offer or something to bring to the table, but you have to get clear on what that is. And most of the time it's not, hi, my name is Megan. I started a company. I want to tell you about it. It's, my name is Megan. I started a company. I learned all of these things. I want to tell your women's conference or your event about this. And like I said, simultaneously, when you show up with that giver's mindset, like, things will happen. And that is the best kind of connection that you can have with an audience is when they can connect with your founder story from that.
Yeah. It's so much more engaging. I think it drops people's guard too. People aren't like, I've got to try to like not get pitched to. It doesn't open anyone up. A story opens everybody up. As soon as you're like, this is what happened to me. Can you believe it? Like that, all of a sudden, like, tell me more, and then you're going to have more opportunities that details will come out that might be interesting and might lead to business. But if you're starting with that desire to pitch, I think people can feel it. I think people just need to hear stories, in my opinion.
Another important thing that I love about you is that it would be really easy for you to just speak to entrepreneurs or people that want to start businesses, because of course you have that experience, but you find yourself speaking to all different industries all over the world, because again, it's not about going on Shark Tank and starting a business. It's about the lessons that you learn that they can apply if they work in HR or if they're in sales or if they're in construction. So extracting that universal experience is something that you've done really well. So I guess what advice would you have for founders or anyone that's looking to kind of take their story and apply it to more of a wide range of people rather than people who are just in their industry or just in their market?
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. And I would say the truth is I started out when I crafted what I speak, it was about, what really was powerful to me, what really meant a lot to me. And I mean, I spent time working on it. I spent time thinking about the lessons and then giving a speech and then being like, oh, you know what, that was interesting. And then I would hear feedback from people. And that was incredibly helpful because everybody heard it so differently than I said it in my head, but it's because they were experiencing it for themselves. And that was an unlock for me to be like, oh, she's not an entrepreneur. He's not an entrepreneur. And he got out of the speech. Okay, wait a second. How can I make this apply to anybody? And how can I, instead of the Shark Tank lessons that, help you be successful at business, it's the Shark Tank lessons that help you be successful at whatever you want to be doing. Family, so that was part of that was me receiving, me being open to what people were telling me as they heard it. So I'd love to act like I knew I could, I don't think I really knew that. I think I really reflected on the speech and really worked on crafting it and putting it together and having it be really, really meaningful and true to my own experience and true to the stories and all that. But then over time it evolved and I really realized that it applies to absolutely everything. And frankly, I apply it to my life with my kids and I'm like, oh, wait a second. Like this can apply to everything. If it applies to business and it applies to personal life, it applies to everything. And also I would say part of that comes from my experience as an entrepreneur. And I know that the lessons in life that we all hear and know, there's a handful of them and they're all the same. Whether you're listening to Megan Reilly, Jess Ekstrom, Gary Vee, it doesn't matter, or your next door neighbor. The true lessons in the world and in life, there's only so many of them. No one's out there telling you sleep in really late, talk trash about people, don't work out, and throw shade to everybody. Nobody says that. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. There are certain things that work. And so my point to that is just that, like, in a lot of really solid messages, you can apply it to everything because the through lines in so many lessons in life are just the same, whether you're a billionaire or, you're trying to make ends meet, or you're an executive or you are not, it doesn't matter. Those lessons in life are constant.
Oh, I love that because one, it goes to show that we have something to learn from everyone. So don't just look up, look around,
100%.
Look to everyone. And two, of course, I'd be remiss if I wasn't thinking about this, and this is going to sound like a shift, but I promise I'm going to bring it back. Artificial intelligence in all of in the creative space, like there's a lot of talk around like writing and this and that, AI. But one of the things that you hit on that I have the same belief is like speaking, and the heart of speaking comes from your lived experiences. And that's something that only humans have, is coming from our lived experiences. Our lessons, like let's say, I'm sure that you and I, in both of our talks, we talk about failure. We talk about confidence. We talk about how we talk to ourselves. So I'm sure that even some of our takeaways are very similar, but our lived experiences are different. And so when you are thinking about what you want to speak on, don't worry if it's like, well, Brene Brown speaks about vulnerability. How can I speak about vulnerability?
Yes.
Your lived experience adds your fingerprints to it. It contextualizes it. So don't think that you have to reinvent the wheel. But going off of lived experiences, I selfishly want to end with being a mom and being a speaker, because that is something new to me. I'm 6 months in. You're a little bit more seasoned in that, and we've had some talks around this. But
seasoned or burnt? I don't know which one it is. I don't know if Yes.
Yeah, I feel that. So, I mean, we've talked about the balance, and, of course, when you do speaking, it requires travel, it requires time away, and that can be tough for moms and dads, or, parents of any kind. How has that influenced speaking? How has being a mom influenced speaking, or even just your career in general?
Yeah. I mean, it's a real thing. And I, as far as like, it can be a real challenge because of the way you want to parent. And that's such a personal thing. Like the way I wanted to parent was I wanted to be like all in it, like I wanted to be a pick up and drop off, there's no one else doing anything at my house. It has been me, and that's how I wanted it. That was my choice. With that decision, I also pushed my speaking career later because I couldn't do both of those things that way that I wanted to at that time in my life, because I already had a full-time job as Tippi Toes. if I was looking to be a full-time speaker and I had kids, then I would have been able to do it in nap times and those types of things. So I think one of the things I just think is really important is to be really honest about where you are and what you want to be true about your life. If you want, if your career means so much to you and you feel alive with that and you want to have your kids in school and most of the time and whatever, or have a staff or whatever, like own it, and that's okay. And that's wonderful. And like live that and then like figure that out. If you have a totally different plan, then just know there's always something we're going to be giving up, because you cannot be a full-time everything to everybody at all times. And I think for a lot of times when when they were babies, I thought that I was just not able to do it all. Like I just thought I'm just not tough enough to do it all. And then I'm like, oh, nobody, you can't do all of those things. You can't be fully present, in my opinion, raising kids and doing nap time and all day and 24/7, literally 24/7. And then also have 3 jobs. Like at some, it's got to give. And I say that with a heart for the young moms who are like thinking they're not doing it right. And in my opinion, I'm like, you're doing whatever, like do what you want, choose the path you want, whether that's at home a lot or not at home a lot or whatever, choose your path and like own it and be great with it. And then know this season changes. Like now my kids are still little. Like most people would say your kids are still younger, 6, 8, and 10, but my life is totally different when they were 1, 3, and 5. Like it's completely different, so I can travel more now. I can't, like, it's all different right now. Yeah. And it's just time goes by so quickly. And so you decide where you want to spend your time, and then know that we are not miracle workers. We are not superhuman. There is only so much that we can do, and that's okay. For years, I was listening to Gary Vee, dreaming of being able to speak, dreaming of being able to have a podcast, dreaming of being able to do that, thinking like, I don't know if I'll ever be able to do that. I don't know. I've got my full-time job as Tippi Toes, and I'm a full-time mom, and that was all I had. And then my youngest went to preschool full-time, 5 days a week. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have 5 hours a day. And that's when I started doing more. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay. And then also you're like, why was I so worried about that for 4 or 5 years? I thought I was like not catching up with everybody. And then you're like, oh geez, forget it. Like whatever, like that is not my concern any longer. I'm like, oh, whatever, I'm here now. This is where it is, So like just being present in the moment and owning where you are, I think is a huge thing for moms to be able to give themselves a break. Whatever you choose, just like recognize it, have that self-awareness. That's your choice. And that's great. And then the season is going to change. And in a few years, it's going to look totally different. So like, it's not that big of a deal. So I have a heart for moms. I have such a heart because I just know, I remember the struggle of feeling like I'm behind. I'm never going to be able to do it. It's too far away. It's not going to happen. I just felt like I would counted myself out because I had a full-time job. I can't do that. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, damn. I can. It's just a few years later than I thought. And I'm doing it. And it's great.
And it's great. Mm-hmm. I'm so glad that I'm wearing my glasses today, because I definitely am feeling a little bit emotional from your response, because it is like, you can't help but second guess yourself and your identity when it shifts so drastically after becoming a mom. Mm-hmm. And this is I'm in a season right now, and I'm in a season where I'm choosing less. I'm in a season where I'm being very selective about when I get on a plane and when I don't. And it's, you can't help but feel like things are falling through your fingertips, and I have to stay relevant, and I have to continue to be seen and exposed. And it's like, no, this is not my turn, and it's not my season, and it's going to change. Yeah. And it's going to be fine.
And it's not like you are sitting at home playing video games, like you are raising a human being, you're raising this sweet, precious kiddo that you're going to do life with for the rest of your life. And so what's a better place to like, let some of those things go through your fingertips, because they'll be there. I didn't have a presence, and I'm far from having any sort of like notoriety, but like, I didn't do anything publicly speaking, nothing until like literally 2020. And it's like all of that time and me being a mom has helped me as a speaker. If I wouldn't have been engaged, then when a mom stands up when I speak and they say, how do you do it all? I would have to fake an answer, but I can then say, sometimes I used to cry in the pantry. And sometimes I crush it at work and I'm not a very good mom. And sometimes I'm a really great mom and I did crafts and I worked on their pincer ability as they were, one. Like, I can relate to them because of that time I had. So even when you feel like your identity shifts as a mom, it's crazy. Like, you live your whole life working to be this career or have this thing, and then you're like, and it switches on a dime. And then you're trying to learn this whole new thing, which is like raising a person, which is kind of important, but you don't know how to do any of it. So everything, and Jess, in your season, everything that you're going to be experiencing in the next few years, if you do pull back or if you do decide to let some of these other gigs go or post a few times less a week, it's all going to end up serving you in a bigger, better way when you're in a place to share more. It's not going away. It's all serving you. It's just maybe not serving you immediately, but it serves you in such a more powerful way than I ever imagined. I didn't imagine that those years of listening to Gary Vee, nursing a baby, feeling overwhelmed, sweating and crying in the pantry, and also having super happy days where I loved life and I was at the park and it was easy and fun. And I was like, this is awesome. I love life. All of that serves me to this day, on stage, in my company, all the time.
And, I was saying to someone the other day about like how I've changed, and I'm like finding myself being emotional right now. So, but it is like, I feel like I used to, before Ellie, like live life between like a 3 and a 7 on the emotional scale. And now I'm finding myself between a 1 and a 10. And so even though I can feel really low lows, I can also feel really high highs that I never felt on my emotional scale before. And like going back to speaking and how speaking is, the gems in our speaking come from lived experiences. I feel the richness of my lived experiences right now. They're still like in the driver's seat. And I like to say, don't speak unless your experiences are in your rearview mirror. But I just know that I'm being shaped right now in a way that in 2, 3, 5 years, I'll be able to share this on stage. But it is like, it's added more depth to my life. And so I have to understand that I'm just in the season of change, and hearing you and your story and how this new just chapters kept turning. And all of a sudden, when you have your handle on one thing, then they go to preschool. And what do I do with 5 hours a day? It's just all evolving.
Yeah. Constantly. And I think if I could tell myself that one thing, it would have been like, just embrace it. Like, just like, don't fight it. And in my head, and I don't think I fought it outwardly, or like, I wasn't like, I don't like to be a mom. Like, I was happy at doing what I did, but mentally there were so many times and I was like, I guess I'm not going to do that. I guess because it wasn't happening in that instant. In my head, I just fought a lot of, I guess she's going to get to do that and I'm not. I guess that's going to be there. I guess I missed the boat. I guess I'm too late. I guess she's already saying what I'm experiencing. So what does it matter? Which is all wrong. None of that's true. But I told myself that for many years and I was wrong. So I would say to you and to anybody else that is in that phase where you're going to be watching people do things. It doesn't matter. It's nothing to do with you. It's nothing to do with you. I certainly have an abundance mindset of like, listen, there are plenty of stages, there's plenty of messages, and your specific lived experience is going to be, no one else is going to have that. No one else is going to have your version. And back to the point of what we talked about earlier, and like, the truths are the truth, but the beauty is in the stories. And you're just in, you're writing chapters of your book right now. And then you'll be able to share that book, at the end of it with everybody and with the world as you continue to speak. And it's only going to make everything more dynamic and interesting and relatable. And that's what I get most of the time. People are like, oh, you're so authentic. Oh, I felt like, and I'm like, yeah, like I don't know how else to do that, because it's about sharing real stuff, in my opinion. And you do that really, really well as well. And I think that your experiences right now in this phase of life will only strengthen that outcome. Like, it will only like make that even more like exciting and engaging to people, because you do it so naturally. And when you add these experiences of what it's like to have a baby at home trying to build an empire, that's a very specific scenario to be able to talk about. And it's just going to serve you. And I feel like as soon as you know it's serving you, you can like embrace it a little bit more. You're like,
exactly. And not
resist. It just looks different.
Feeling like I should be here when I'm there and all of that. Man, okay. We have to wrap before I need to like call someone to get tissues in here.
I love it. Well, I'm so happy for you.
If you're not following Megan already on LinkedIn, please do so. You are one of those writers that like anytime I see your name pop up, I just know that I'm gonna have to pause and read. So
that's so nice.
Keep
Thank you.
Yes. And where else can people find you, your podcast, speaking, all of that?
Yeah. So LinkedIn is my favorite place. I like to spend time there. So everyone, I have a podcast called Who's Your Mama? I interview moms who've raised extraordinary people like Sarah Blakely, Jesse Ekstrom, Ramit Sethi, just a lot of different really interesting people. Because again, as a mom, I'm like, what did you do? How did you do this? How did you raise these happy people? So it's available on all platforms. It's called Who's Your Mama? And then LinkedIn's the best place for me. And then, our Tippi Toes brand is growing, and hopefully we'll be in a city near you soon. But Tippi Toes Dance is a fun company to watch. If you've got little ones, then hopefully we can serve you guys with some really fun dance classes. So yeah, I think that's it. But hit me up on LinkedIn. I love seeing people in the comments. Comments are better for me than messages. I don't know about you, but messages in LinkedIn.
Yes, I know DMs can get overwhelming. Yes,
a little.
I'm like, sorry, I'm responding 4 years later, but here we go.
Yes, so true.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great day. Bye, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Amplify. If you are a fan of the show, show us some podcast love by giving us a rating and review. And give us a follow at Mic Drop Workshop and at Jess Ekstrom. This episode was edited and produced by Earfluence, and I'm Jess Ekstrom, your host. Remember that you deserve the biggest stage, so let's find out how to get you there. I'll see you again soon.